And so, building on last week's post in this series about rejecting whiteness as the default, I want to go a step further. So let me say it here for you. The history of feminism as we know it in mainstream America is riddled with exclusion, erasure, and narrow-mindedness. For far too long, the narrative has centered white women's needs, ambitions, and identities, often at the expense of Black, Brown, Asian, Indigenous, and even queer sisters, not to mention mixed women in any of these groups, who fought just as fiercely for freedom, but who were left out, erased, or pushed aside when it came time to take credit or share power. So, is feminism too narrow-minded? I say absolutely. And unless we face this truth, our progress will always stand on shaky ground. The myths of women's suffrage in the early 20th century features iconic heroines such as Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. But most mainstream stories gloss over how Black activists were systematically excluded from these movements. Suffragists like Mary Church Terrell and Ida B. Wells fought not only against sexist laws, but also against their white counterparts who deemed Black voices and votes too risky for the cause. Terrell's leadership in the National Association of Colored Women and Wells's refusal to march at the back of the suffrage parades were acts of righteous resistance against these narrow-minded viewpoints. And this kind of story repeats when we think of Indigenous activists like Glory of the Morning, the only female chief of the Ho-Chunk Winnebago Nation, or others who called out colonial and racist agendas in early feminist movements. Consider this: if women's rights excluded so many women, what justice was truly won? Now let's fast forward to second wave feminism of the 1970s. This era made huge strides in fighting workplace discrimination, sexual harassment, and for abortion rights. But again, whiteness remained at the center. The lived experiences of Black women, Latina activists, Asian Americans, and Indigenous feminists barely registered in mainstream feminist organizing. On the other side of the pond, we had women like Olive Morris, who co-founded the Brixton Black Women's Group in the UK, and Claudia Jones, who is one of the imaginary interviews in my in-progress book, a communist expelled from the US, who laid the groundwork for intersectional activism in the US and the UK by, among other things, founding the first Notting Hill Carnival, which is the world's largest street fair. And while Gloria Steinem's fame soared, civil rights leaders such as Shirley Chisholm and Flo Kennedy were less recognized for their intersecting battles of race and gender. How much do you know about Jocelyn Elders, the first African-American U.S. Surgeon General, or Funmilayo Ransome Kuti, the Nigerian feminist? Yes, she was Fela's mother, but she was also a groundbreaking feminist and political activist in her own right. If these four mothers haven't been included in your version of feminist history, the good news is that there's plenty of time to amend that. You can sign up for our bi-weekly Sistery Lessons newsletter to learn more about some of these women, and most of all, what their passion and fortitude can mean for us today in our time of resistance and resilience. Okay, a confession. I was given a copy of Sheryl Sandberg's 2013 book, Lean In, and I kind of thought it was interesting. I also was a fundraiser adjacent to Silicon Valley, so I didn't want to get on those folks' bad side. If you're not familiar with this tome, which is not aged super well, it was all about equating women's empowerment with personal ambition and power suits. It conveniently left out nagging realities for many of us, such as structural racism, pay gaps, opportunity inconsistencies, and the preponderance of low-pay work for Black and brown women. Honestly, if I wanted to work for a tech startup, which I did at the time, I probably had a better chance of getting a cafeteria job than getting near the C-suite. this unlearning and leaning out was painful for me. If it wasn't for you, I salute you for your better sense of self-protection. But what I can say now with hindsight is, if empowerment means you get a seat at the board table while your trans or disabled sister is still locked outside, is real change happening? Or just more hierarchy, more narrow-mindedness with a swash of color? The feminism for which I am a proponent today is intersectional, born out of the work of Black, Brown, Asian, Indigenous, queer, disabled, and other discriminated foremothers who refuse to wait for permission to claim their voice. And as you may know, the term intersectionality, coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, Dr. Crenshaw, demands attention to the compound oppressions of race, gender, class, sexuality, and more. And as I work on my new book, I get to interview and expand my knowledge in celebration of unapologetic leaders like Alda do Espírito Santo of Sao Tome and Príncipe, Afro-Venezuelan educator, activist, and feminist Argelia Mercedes Lea Lopez, Malian writer, independence fighter, and Pan-African feminist Awa Keita, and Martinique's Paulette Nadal, the founder of the Negritude movement, among scores of others who demonstrate how powerful and inspiring it can be when feminism is decentered from whiteness and rooted in solidarity and justice. Intersectional feminism fights not just for the right to vote or work, but for housing, healthcare, bodily autonomy, and freedom from colonial and patriarchal violence. And they are the true sheroes. They did not wait for permission to speak for their communities. They insisted that women's rights only matter if they include every woman. So the question I will leave you with here, if you are on an allyship journey, is this: are you showing up just for your comfort or for true solidarity? I have another question. What stories are you platforming? Whose voices do you amplify? And whose wounds do you seek to see and work to heal? Are you listening to the voices of women like Nanny of the Maroons, Chavela Vargas, or Cleopatra White as much as you listen to the usual suspects? And a hint, they're all going to be in my new book, but you can Google them now. And here are a few other questions. When was the last time you learned about a feminist icon who wasn't white, straight, or cisgender? How can you push beyond narrow-minded inclusion to champion real intersectional justice? Who's missing from your story of allyship, and what will you do to invite them in? I'll see you next time.